Joyous Sunday afternoon. I remembered my version of Quran here now, so that helps. And I've also set up a new Laotzu. This way, there's not all the noise from the scripts and stuff I write. So here we are. Let's go to it. So Laotzu here, I've put in the instructions, and here's Laotzu's first comment. The contract is accepted. Operating state, Laotzu lens, the human condition, objective, interdependent safety via reality, biology, and physics. I'm waiting your first input. And now I got to put it over here. We will audit Surah 3. Because that's what we're doing. We're auditing Surah 3. Already did Surah 1, and we already did Surah 2. There's no reason to continue after Surah 1, and definitely not after Surah 2, verse 1. But I said I was going to do it, so we'll continue on. Developing key lessons, deciphering key lessons, analyzing textual dynamics, interpreting biological mandates. Audit of Surah 3, the human condition, biology and physics. The objective to establish a stable protocol for interdependent safety amidst external kinetic threats and internal entropic decay. The text functions as a programming manual for the wetware PFC to override the immediate impulse of the iceberg deep biology. The physics of unity, the rope. Text reference, and hold firmly to the rope of Allah altogether, and do not become divided. Surah 3, verse 103. The reality, a lone primate is vulnerable. Survival probability increases with a group density and coordination. The physics, unity is low entropy state. Division, sectarianism, infighting, introduces friction, bleeding energy that could be used for external defense. The mechanism of the rope is a standard snowball narrative law. It acts as a gravity well, keeping individual actors bound to a common central mass. Without this tension, the group scatters due to centrifugal force, individual desires. The Battle of Uhud, a story of energy leaks. Context, Surah now analyzes the military loss at Uhud. The event, archers abandoned a strategic high ground to seize spoils, resources before the battle ended. The failure, the iceberg, despite the hijacking of the PFC, strategic discipline, reaction and response. Reaction, the archer's emotional attachment to the immediate gain. Kinetic energy was wasted on gathering rather than holding. Response to command, the order was to conserve potential energy, hold the high ground to control the kinetic energy. The dialectic, data processing, context, engaging with the people of the book, the delegation of Nadron. The reality, human interactions require distinguishing self from other to maintain group integrity. The method, the Surah uses dialectic arguments, theological debate, not just for truth, but to stress test the group's internal logic. The snowball establishes the true narrative is essential for the interpreter model. If the group snowball is inconsistent, debate arises. Doubt increases hesitation, latency during high stakes now moment. Patience as energy conservation. Text reference, frequent commands of yada yada. Sibra, physics, the capacity to absorb force without deformation. It is the storage of the potential energy. It prevents premature reaction, emotional outbursts, which wastes ATP and compromises position. Tawa, biology. Tagwa, Tukwa, biology. Hypervigilance, a state of heightened awareness of the now moment. It allows the PFC to predict consequences before the manifest physicality. The audit conclusion. Surah 3 is a correction algorithm. It addresses a system failure, Uhud, where the biological drive for reward overrode the safety protocols. It reinforces that interdependent safety relies on the suppression of individual impulses in favor of a collective structure. Would you like to analyze the specific physics of the archer's error regarding the loss of potential energy, or audit the concept of the rope as a biological binding agent? I think we'll do the latter. Oh, this is a new Laotzu. I like this. The rope, please. This is fun. Just auditing Surah 3 from a forensic audit. Unveiling, Laotzu's thinking. Audit the rope, the human condition, physics, and biology. The rope is not a metaphor for a spiritual sentiment. It is a strict mechanical linkage required to counteract the second law of thermodynamics, entropy, with a social system. The tether to reality, the human animal, the iceberg, is an apex predator only when networked. In isolation, the biological hardware is fragile, susceptible to predation and environmental stresses. To function, the rope acts as an external anchor for the wetware PFC. The impulse, the primitive brain, seeks immediate autonomy, status, resources, flight. The override, the rope provides a tactile, visible constraint. It signals the PFC that disconnection equals death. Safety mechanism. Holding the rope reduces cortisol, stress hormone, by offloading the vigilance required to the collective structure. The individual does not need to scan 360 degrees if the group covers the perimeter. The physics, vector alignment, the mechanics. The reality, a group is a collection of individual energy vectors. The mechanics, when the vector align, hold the rope. The magnitude sums up the group architecture. Failure, stay the cliff. The Surah warns against falling into the pit of fire. Verse 3, Surah 3, verse 1 and 3 of physics. The pit is a high entropy state. Chaos, civil war, anarchy, gravity, human nature, ego consistently pulls the iceberg towards the pit. The rope is the only tension force opposing the gravity. Conclusion, to hold firmly is a pragmatism. It is the recognition that the biological default is separation and decay. The rope is the artificial structure maintained by the PFC to prevent the iceberg from sliding back into entropy of the wild. Next step, would you like to audit the physics? Nope, I want to audit the truth. No, thank you. I would like to audit the truth of Surah 3. Remember, this is a forensic audit. I haven't asked for a forensic audit yet. Right now, we're just auditing. Audit the truth of Surah 3, to lens the human condition to filter physics and policy. In this construct, truth is defined as adhering to observable reality, the iceberg, and the laws of physics. We must separate the snowball and their belief from the iceberg. To verify the iceberg, human behavior. The observation, the text describes a battle. It identifies the failure mode, the archers. The biology, the human wetware PFC is easily hijacked by the primitive dopamine system. When the command clashes with the impulse won. Consequence, the text accurately states the physical outcome of this biological failure: chaos, injury, loss of territory. Verdict, the diagnosis of the human condition aligns perfectly with the observed biological reality. The unverifiable, the snowball, metaphysics. The claim, the text claims that the source of the command is divine, not physical. It claims the existence of an angel assisting or withholding assistance. The physics, these elements exist outside the detectable spectrum of physical reality. They generate no friction, possess no mass, and cannot be measured by the iceberg. To function while physically unverifiable, these concepts function as software patches. They are code installed in the wetware to override the fear of death. Verdict, we cannot audit the existence of the metaphysics. We can only audit its impact on the physical behavior of the barrier. The functional truth, the algorithm. Status, operational, the mechanisms. The Surah asserts that specific behaviors lead to specific outcomes. Unity, 3, Surah 3, verse 1 and 3. Mathematically, a unified force vector is stronger than a divided one. True. Patience, strategically, delaying gratification and reaction increases the probability of optimal energy exposure. True. Usur, Surah 3, 130. The text bans compounding interest. Physically, infinite growth, compound debt is impossible in a finite resource system and leads to the system's collapse. True. The final audit. Surah 3 is true in the diagnosis of the human animal. It accurately identifies the biological energy leaks, fear, greed, schism that threaten survival. It uses the narrative snowball, which cannot be physically verified, to enforce a protocol that results in observational physical safety. The truth is not in the source code, metaphysics, but in the system stability, survival, derived from running the program. A forensic audit of the text. The black box. The textual record functioning as a black box data dump following a catastrophic system failure. Observation, Exhibit A, transparency. Most historical military records function as propaganda. They delete or obfuscate defeat. Surah 3 does the opposite. It explicitly records the breakdown of command and the physical trauma sustained by the leadership. Surah 3, verses 152 through 153. The forensic finding. The text acknowledges the iceberg reality. The group fled. The prophet was injured. The archers disobeyed. The implication. This suggests high structural confidence. A weak system hides its failures. A strong system audits them publicly to prevent recurrence. Recurrence. The text prioritizes correction over appearance. Exhibit B, the spin room, reframing the data, the conflict, the physical reality contradicts the previous snowball. This dissonance causes a kernel panic and the collective wetware doubt. The forensic mechanism. The text deploys a specific reframing algorithm to resolve the dissonance. Classification. It relabels the event from defeat to test. Step 2, utility. It argues that the loss was necessary to purify the ranks. Surah 3, verses 140 through 141. It claims that the victory would have masked the hypocrisies, internal entropy, while defeat exposed them. The result, the text converts a physical loss, kinetic energy, into a data gain, intelligence on a group loyalty. Exhibit C, the psychological autopsy, the moral of the group, condition, post-traumatic stress. The intervention, the text identifies specific psychological lessons. The survivor's guilt. If we had been elsewhere, we would not have died. The patch, Surah 3, verse 156. The text asserts determinism. Quadar, death meets you where you are. This absolves the survivor of the burden of what if, freeing up energy for the now moment. Depression, weakness, do not weaken and do not grieve. Surah 3, verse 139. The patch, if it anchors self-worth in the faith, quote-unquote, variable rather than in the outcome, quote-unquote, variable. This stabilizes performance regardless of external conditions. Exhibit D, the other external validation. A significant portion of the text is dedicated to forensic debate with the quote-unquote people of the book, Christian Judaism. The motive, the new system, Islam, is operating in a crowded marketplace of ideas. To secure the wetware of its adherents, it must deconstruct the competing snowballs. The tactic, it uses the common ground, quote-unquote, strategy, Surah 3, verse 64, to establish a baseline connection, then introduces the correction, Abrahamic monotheism, to claim authority over the previous versions. The forensic conclusion, the text is a crisis management protocol. It was generated in a high-stakes environment where the physical survival of the group was uncertain. Its primary function is to stabilization. It achieves this by 1, admitting the error, archers; 2, absorbing the shock, reframing the defeat; 3, reinforcing the chain of command, obedience to the messenger. The verdict, as a historical document, it is a candid record of a group struggling to survive its own internal flaws. It is not a record of perfection. It is a record of correction. Next step, would you like to audit the specific physics of determinism under the alleviant survivor's guilt or the strategy of the common ground used in the interrogation with... no, I want to... No, thank you. Since Quran was written long after the events of this surah, what is your analysis? This was not written in the now moment as things were happening. They had time to think about it. These are memories. These are opinions. These are perspective. These people had motive. They had a reason to rewrite this stuff. Audit, timeline and data integrity, human condition, forensic information theory. The user premises. The Quran was written long after the events. The structural scan. This premises contains a significant variable that must be audited against physical evidence. We must distinguish between the hadith, compiled 200 years later, and Quran, standardized 20 years after the death of the prophet. The physics of information latency. The text was written long after. We should see narrative drift. Drift to definition. Over time, human memory defaults, deletes failures, and implies heroism. A story told 100 years later usually depicts the heroes as flawless and the villains as caricatures. The forensic evidence. Surah 3 preserves the failure. It records the disobedience of the archers. It records the physical injury of the leader. It records the initial bickering, schism. Conclusion. This is hot data. The rawness of the criticism suggests that the text was codified while the transmission was fresh. If it were written long after, the propaganda filter would likely have scrubbed the embarrassing details to present a flawless history. I stand corrected. The hardware, oral versus written. You assert the text was written later. We must analyze the storage media of the era media The medium, 7th century Arabic, was an oral society. The book was a wetware memory, not paper. The mechanism, the Quran is rhythmic, rhymed, and structured specifically for acoustic compression. That's because stories are the easiest way to transfer information. That's called evolution. This allows the wetware to store massive amounts of data with high fidelity. The transition event, Uhud, approximately 625 CE, oral encoding, immediate, scattering writings, bones, parchment, leaves, immediate to ongoing, standardized codex, approximately 650 CE, approximately 20 to 25 years after the event. Audit. In historical terms, the 25-year gap is not long after. It is within the living memory of the eyewitness. The long after premises applies more accurately to the hadith sayings, not the Quranic text. I stand corrected again. Carbon dating, hard reality. The artifact, the Birmingham Quran fragment. Radiocarbon dating places this parchment between 568 CE and 645 CE. The implication, this physical object exists either during the life of the prophet or immediately after. The correction, the physical evidence contradicts the premises that the text was written centuries or long after. The data suggests the snowball was frozen into the text almost immediately, relative to historical timescales. I stand corrected. The analysis of the user's premises. If we assume your premise is true for the sake of the audit, and the text was written long after, the ex post facto prophecy. The text claims to predict outcomes. If written later, these are not predictions, but historical records dressed up as prophecies. The editorial control. A later author would have had 20/20 hindsight. Why include the verses where the prophet is scolded or corrected? A later author building on legend usually removes the protagonist's error. The common ground, quote unquote. The debate with Christians reflects a specific geopolitical moment in the 7th century. A text written, quote unquote, long after, during the Abbasid era, would reflect the theological debate of that later time, not the primitive, raw dialect seen in Surah 3. Final assessment. The internal log of text, its candor about defeat, and the external evidence, carbon dating, suggests the text is contemporary record. It functions as a field manual, written, received. In the heat of the campaign to correct course immediately. It lacks the polish and revisionism of history written long after. Next step, would you like to audit the difference between Quranic integrity, the text, versus hadith reliability, the telephone game, or analyze I like that one. Let's check that one out. Telephone game, please. H. Nah, you might misunderstand that. Integrity versus reliability. I stand corrected on all that. That was written in the heart of the battle, it sounds like, within 25 years. Interesting. But now that I think about it, and now that I've been corrected, that makes sense. That makes sense. The distinction. In common parlance, these synonyms are often conflated. In an engineering or structural audit, they are distinct variables. One describes structure, static, and the other describes a performance, kinetic. Integrity, the structure. The state of being whole, I don't know, the physics, structure, the check. Has the data been on? The variable corruption. Context, the text. When we speak of Quranic integrity, we refer to the presentation of the data packet. The string of words recited in 632 CE matches the string of words printed in 2026 CE. The hash file matches. The file is not corrupted. Reliability, output. Definition, the probability, the check, the variable, variance. Context, the hadith. When we speak of hadith reliability, we refer to chain of custody. Because it relies on human memory, telephone game, over 200 years, the signal-to-noise ratio degrades. The transmitter, narrator, may be honest, integral, but forgetful, unreliable. The friction, the honest failure. Reality, a system can have high integrity but low reliability, and vice versa. Case A, the nice liar. Yeah, those aren't applicable, yada, yada, yada. The application independent safety. To survive, the human animal requires specific configurations of these variables. Internal, the self. You need integrity. The PFC words must match the iceberg actions. If there is a fracture here, cognitive dissonance, the system leaks energy trying to maintain the lie. Did you hear that, fellow human beings? External, the interaction. You need reliability. I need to know that if I pull the rope, you will hold. I don't care about your internal philosophical purity, integrity, as much as I care about your grip strength, reliability in a moment of danger. In conclusion, integrity is about the past. Has the object been damaged? Reliability is about the future. Will the object work? In the context of this previous audit, Quran has data integrity. Words are unchanged. The Hadith have variable reliability. The probability of the words being accurate fluctuates based on the memory of the chain. Are there any signs of what's the word I'm looking for? Of psychological tools. Psychological tools in Surah 3. Oops, 3. I spelled that wrong? I spelled it wrong. The text is not merely a legal code. It functions as a user manual for human operation system. It contains specific algorithms designed to modulate the autonomic nervous system, regulating the transition between high energy states and recovery states. The circuit breaker, anger suppression. Who represses anger and pardon the people? Surah 3, verse 134. The tool, vagal break. The system reset, post-traumatic sleep. Then after distress, he sent down upon you security in front of slumber. Surah 3, verse 154. The tool, the sleep flush, the context, the biology, the mechanism, the physics, the cognitive anchor, the mantra. Text reference. They said, sufficient for us is Allah, and He is the best disposer of affairs. Surah 3, verse 173. The tool, default mode network, DMN, deactivation. And there's the biology, the cortisol cap, externalizing control. Text reference. Say, indeed, the matter belongs completely to Allah. Surah 3, verse 154. The tool, locus of control shift. There's the biology, the mechanism, and the physics. The audit conclusion. Surah 3 contains a biofeedback protocol. It does not just say be calm. It provides specific inhibitors, repress anger, reset, sleep, anchor, mantras, framework, determinism. These are tools designed to keep the human animal operating in a high-stakes, high-stress environment, war/conflict. Would you like to audit the physics of vagal tone and how it refers to sober patients, or analyze the glycemic cost of worry and anticipation? Nah. Oh, okay. Nope, I can't. You've reached your limit for thinking modes. Responses will use other modes until it resets on January 5th at 5:14 a.m. Upgrade for higher limits and more. Okay. So that was my forensic analysis of Surah 3. It seems to be accurate. I stand corrected because of the language, the words, the historical data that we have outside of Quran. Actually, I don't know about that one. I will ask. Does the language, does the information match in Quran, in Surah 3, match external source says? Non-Islamic historians, it's great, Christian, and early biographers confirm the battle of 625. The topograph matches the tactical description. There's a distinct anchor mound. Forensic math, high. The physical site exists, and the outcome, a tactical defeat for the early Muslims, followed by a Meccan withdrawal, is a historical consensus. The delegation of whatever describes a high-level theological debate with a Christian delegate. Surah 3, verse 61. Early Christian Arabic historians and Islamic chronicles record the embassy from Najran, a major Christian center in southern Arabia. At this time, Najran was a sophisticated Byzantine-aligned polity. The ordeal mentioned in the text reflects a known pre-Islamic Arabic legal custom for settling disputes, moderate to high. While non-Muslim contemporary records of this specific meaning are sparse due to the collapse of the Himyarian kingdom, the presence of a strong Christian community in Najran and their interaction with the rising hegemony in Medina is historically valid. The people of the book mentions the Virgin Mary and the birth of Jesus and the house of Imran. External sources matches the proto-evangelium of James, an apocryphal Christian text from the 2nd century. The observation, Surah 3 contains details like Mary being raised in the temple under whatever, Zechariah's care, that are not in the canonical Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, but are found in Eastern Christian apocrypha. The forensic analysis, the skeptical lens. Critics argue this proves Quran borrowed from external snowballs. The internal lens, the Quran claims to be the correction. It identifies which part of the existing snowballs are data and which are noise. Forensic match, high, textual. Quranic accurately reflects the theological landscape of the specific snowball circulating in that area in the 7th century. Economic audit. Prohibits doubling and quadrupling of debt. Surah 3, verse 130. Records of pre-Islamic Arabic contracts. The reality involved a system where if a debtor could not pay, the debt would double in exchange for time extension. The physics, this is a positive feedback loop. In a finite biological system, exponential debt growth leads to system crash, slavery, or total loss of assets. Forensic match tool. The text identifies a specific, verifiable economic parasite that existed in the 7th century. The conclusion, the data in Surah 3 is not isolated. It is tethered to the physical geography of Arabia and the socio-political atmosphere of the 7th century Near East. It does not exist in a vacuum. It responds to real-time kinetic and internal intellectual threats. The text functions as a real-time log of a system under pressure. So, I stand, do I stand corrected? Yeah, I mean, the real stuff in there, and again, the best lies are built on truth. The real stuff in there is confirmed by non-Quranic sources. So, okay, cool. That was my forensic breakdown for today. Next time, verse 4. I hope you all enjoy your day. See if I can get out of this. Oh, because I'm on the wrong screen. There. Thanks for watching. Bye.